Stop.
Good evening. On behalf of the organizers, I wanted to extend to you a warm and heartfelt welcome to the Youth Korea Professional Development, Innovation, and Entrepreneur Experience Sharing Forum. My name is Danielle Chen, and I'm your moderator for today's forum. In this virtual heaven of inspiration and mutual support, we come together to uplift, learn, and empower each other on our unique journeys. Today, we bring some exceptional individuals from diverse backgrounds who have scaled the heights of success in their respective fields, embarking on a journey of inspiration and insight. Our virtual stage is set for an exploration of career growth, innovation, and entrepreneurial empowerment. I want to take a moment to thank the organizing committee members and volunteers. Without your support, this event would not be possible. And today's topics, as you can see, that we have reviewed together. So we're going to cover these, but I'm going to introduce the 5 speakers a little later than this. So next, and I wanted to share with you that today's forum is actually an extension of our annual career development event, which is held each year in the springtime. Here we have a couple of slides to share with you. So the annual Professional Career Development Forum and Job Fair has been established as a significant community event that bridges the hiring companies and job seekers. So this event is jointly organized by CCAA, CCEA, and CPAC, and some other distinguished sponsors like TD, Deloitte, EQ Bank, GM, Diversity Institute, etc. It aims to provide opportunity for job searching, career development, and inclusivity. I'm sure you're looking forward to our 2024 event, and I hope to see you there. So please get ready to meet our extraordinary guest speakers to share their life journey and stories, and be prepared to be enlightened, motivated, and driven by these incredible stories of perseverance, innovation, and success. Now, before we do that, I just wanted to mention that these are some of the people that you see, the organizing committee members. For instance, Mr. Chen Zhen from CCEA, he's the acting chairman. And then we have Mr. Wang Qi from CPAC. We have Mr. Zhao from CCAA, Bill Ye from the CCA Charity Foundation. We have Emily from CCFA, and then Thomas Lee from the NACAE in the automobile industry. Of course, we're going to invite them back in our Q&A session, and we can, share more stories among all of us. Now, I'm going to do a little housekeeping notes. First is the disclaimer, and I'm going to read it just for one time. The opinions expressed by the guest speakers represent only the speakers themselves and do not represent the views of the organizers or speakers' companies. Some of the information shared by this forum may not be accurate over time and need to be reinvestigated. The viewpoints of the speakers can be referenced, may not be used as a guideline for decision-making. The keynote or guest speakers and speakers' companies do not assume any responsibilities arising therefrom. Please quote based on your own discretion. And the second is that if you have any questions, please leave your message at the chat box, and we will definitely review and answer your questions at the end of the session. Thank you very much. All right, so first, I'd like to invite our distinguished guest speaker, Eddie Wang. Now, he is the co-founder and managing director of Top Offer, an entrepreneur with a global footprint. Eddie's projects span from Canada, Singapore, Israel to Tanzania, combining academic excellence from York Schulich and Cambridge University Judge Business Schools with real-world entrepreneurial ventures is an impressive feat. This unique blend of academia and practical experience has influenced Eddie's approach to business strategies and decision-making. So welcome, Eddie. The stage is yours. I'm sure the audience is eager to hear your story.
Hi, everybody. I don't know. Can you see me all right?
Yes, we can see you all right.
Okay, I'm going to share my presentation.
Thank you.
And before I share my presentation, I should start sharing my screen so you can see what's going on.
So Eddie is actually very busy. He's taking this time to join us and share his story, and and he needs to leave. I think around 9 o'clock. So we're
9
gonna
o'clock, yes. I have another
ask
meeting
you
at
to,
9.
at 9 o'clock. I know. So we're gonna probably ask you some questions right before the
Right.
presentation.
My last
Thank you.
meeting today ends at 1 o'clock, so it's well, great. Thank you so much, Daniel, for the introduction. My name is Eddie, and a little bit about myself. I am 26-year-old, graduated from the School of Business of York University. That's my undergrad, and then did my master's at Judge at Cambridge. I also did international exchange, also entrepreneurial bootcamp at the Singapore Management University, as well as the Technion Institute of Technology out in Israel. So I did a bit of global traveling, studied international business actually, and then specialized in the field of innovation and entrepreneurship. Now, I am the co-founder and managing director at Top Offer. So managing director is as high as it goes in my company. And my company is an education consulting firm in Toronto. If you are in Toronto, you might be able to see our sign at Highway 7, not Highway 7, Highway 404 and Finch. Come by to say hi. So we help graduate schools recruit for master candidates. At the same time, we help about 3,000 students prepare for a master application on an annual basis. Now, our company currently employs over 200 employees across the globe. And now, I'm not going to get in too much about my company just yet. I wanted to share more of my journey as an entrepreneur and as a first and second generation immigrant. Now, I saw on the poster, this actually wasn't any material I prepared before, but I saw on the poster that a lot of the presenters today are actually second generation immigrants. So I'm going to start with my immigration journey and how I came here as a kid. So I'm caught in between being a first generation and a second generation immigrant to Canada. I consider myself as a first generation immigrant because I came to Canada with my family when I was 8 years old. That was 2005. So the skyline in Toronto looked like this, as opposed to what it is now. A lot more buildings, a lot more interesting actually now. So back then, TECs didn't have their first token yet. Everyone was using paper tickets. North of Highway 7 was considered farmland, and Major Mackenzie was like wilderness to us back then in 2005. And there weren't many Chinese restaurants around. Never mind, the abundance of bubble tea shops, Chinese supportive communities like the ones that are today. And I'm sure a lot of the communities here today, were existing in 2005, but they were just not as big and powerful as they are today. And along with my parents, I've experienced the firsthand challenges and hardships of immigrating and settling in a new country. And I also consider myself as a second generation immigrant because I did spend most of my time growing up in Canada as a Canadian, and share the similar value and journeys as most Canadian kids do. Now, I had the luxury of being harbored, with the resources and the opportunities growing up. And while my parents fought very hard, as first generation immigrants to settle and succeed in a new country where we now call home. So therefore, whether as a first generation immigrant or a second generation immigrant, I do owe a great debt to the sacrifices that my parents have made. And I'm sure a lot of the guest speakers here today would also agree with me on that, for the opportunity to grow and succeed in the country, in Canada. Now, a little bit about myself. So I grew up in a North York community in Toronto. So I finished my primary school, junior high, secondary school, all in North York. As you can tell from my slides, I did not enjoy my time in school. So let's get over it. And I started my first business in grade 11 with my partner, Liana. And I introduced her in the picture today because she is also my wife, but now let's not talk about her today because it's my story. So bye, Liana. So in grade 11, we invented our own product, which is a touchscreen ring. Now back then, that was 2011 or 2012. Back then, there weren't, fancy gadgets like touchscreen rings before. And so we invented this little rubber ring you put on top of your gloves so that you could touch the screens of your smartphone, mobile devices, without ever having to exchange gloves. Now, still today, I still think it's a great product, but we didn't continue on doing this. But it was the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey, so I think that was very important. I wanted to share this with you. So, to sell that product that we invented and we produced, manufactured in China, actually, we spoke to a bunch of retail stores to see if they could sell our products. And the answer that we got was no. And everyone had the same answer. So, and we started wondering, why didn't they want to sell our products? We have such an amazing product. I think myself, for one, is a very good salesman. So, and we started wondering, we started researching. Now, as a 15-year-old, I soon realized, there were so many questions, so many answers, so many reasons that they didn't want to, behind the reason why they didn't want to sell our products. For example, we were just kids, our product quality, a lot of them didn't think it was good, although we don't think so. We think it's amazing. And, the profit margin isn't high enough for them, although we still didn't think so. And then the list goes on, they just didn't want to sell our product. Now, we soon realized trying to figure out why they didn't want to sell a product was not relevant. The question is, how do we get them to sell a product? How do we get these retail stores, on every block of the street to sell this product that we invented? And our solution was, we need to speak to their boss. We need to speak to their CEO to have them sell our products. So, these store owners will do so. So the next step is very simple. We have to speak to their CEO. So now, speaking with a giant corporation CEO would never be an easy journey. Now, and you guys could try, you could barely go through their email, their secretary even. And sure thing, for two high school students, trying to reach out to giant corporation CEO may be a very challenging task, but we were on that task and we were determined. And, and we thought maybe the easiest way is probably just bump into some of them on the street on the way home. So that was the beginning of the plan. And now that plan evolved. That plan became, so we started practicing our elevator pitch to see, if one day we bump into one CEO, we could pitch them. And then we realized that a lot of these CEOs would actually attend these events as guest speakers. And back then, they didn't have Zoom. So all the events, like the one that we have today, were probably in person, downtown Toronto somewhere. So the plan was, we're going to scout, these CEOs to see where they attend the events. And then we're going to stop them on the way from the podium to the car. And that's what we did. Grade 11. It was very fun. I'm very proud today still. And we stopped them. And we did our elevator pitch amazing. We told them how amazing our product was. And, and a lot of them told us to off. And many of them give us opportunity. Now, many asked me, were you afraid? Did you think, they would be offended? And I didn't care. Why? Because the worst answer I could have got was no. And which is the same as not asking. So that's what we did. We went to many events. We stopped the CEOs, senior executives, whoever we could find. We were downtown, 3 of the 5 days in a week. The other 2, we have to go to band because we were in school. And we stopped the CEOs. And at the end of, a very long journey, I say, we were able to get private meetings with the CEO of Wind Mobile, which is nowadays Freedom Mobile, and also the COO, the Chief Operating Officer at Rogers. And we talked to them, and they gave us opportunity. They were there to help, and they were impressed by our product because I know our product's amazing, and they felt it too. So, the deal with Wind went through. So with Wind CEOs back then, it was Anthony Lacavera. He sold his company and now became Freedom Mobile. With his support, we quickly received the order from Wind's headquarters. So our product was quickly in the hands of store managers across Wind Mobile, retail stores across Canada. And that was a big win for us. We were 2 high school students, grade 11, and that's how we embarked on our entrepreneurial journey since. And it felt really good. It felt amazing, actually. And we felt powerful. And then we went to school, and then we went off to university. So that business ended there because, honestly speaking, although as much as I love the product, it wasn't so great. And there are a lot of improvements that we had to make. And it was not something that we wanted to keep going. So we went off to university and scouting, what other opportunities we could look for, what other opportunities we could develop. And so my goal going to school was, well, I had two goals. One was to travel the world like everybody else, because I was an international program. That was fun. And the second goal was to start a business with my partner, which then evolved into my girlfriend then. And I chose to go to Schulich because Schulich gave me a scholarship I just cannot refuse, for the entrepreneurial initiatives that I had. Practically, I didn't pay any tuition. And my girlfriend back then, now my wife, went to Queens. And as you can see on the slide, my goal one was to travel the world. Goal two was to do my own startup. Grades was not something I cared about at all. So, traveling the world through university was like the best time of my life. I've learned so much through traveling the world and meeting different people, having new perspectives. I worked as a management consultant in Africa, studying in Singapore, started a business there too. Also, started another business in Israel, traveled to Asia, Europe. The 4 years of my undergraduate life, not in school, was the best time of my life. But my time in school, actually, despite all the fun I had, around school and not in school, I didn't really like the education system. I didn't like going to school. I believe the education system didn't fit me too well. The system, see, it prepares you to become good employees. And I love the system because I need good employees now, but it was not for me. It was not what I wanted to be. I wanted to be free. I wanted to not go to work at 9 in the morning every day, although now I have to go to work at 8. But back then that was not the plan. So, I thought I wanted to use my time wisely. I wanted to stick with my goal, to start a business, to find the solution, to start something that I could work on entrepreneurial. So, and then, it's just an example to see how university trains you to become good employees. Have you ever wondered why you have to go to school? Why do you have to listen to a prof? Because to me, I'm the customer in the school. I shouldn't be listening to the prof. I'm buying their service. And in my opinion, as a customer, I could pick and choose which classes I want to go and which classes I didn't want to attend, not the other way around. I don't have to listen to professor. Now, I know a lot of audience probably would not agree with me. My mothers till this day don't agree with me on this, but that was what I believed in. So that was what I did. I stopped going to class at all. And the cost of not going to class was at York, it was 10% of my participating grade, which can be viewed as a sunk cost. So after skipping all of my classes, I realized that I had all the time in the world to do whatever I want, to explore new business idea, to visit my girlfriend at Queens. As a York student, I actually spent half of my university at Kingston. And I think they teach better. And that was really what allowed me to have the time in school to be able to work on various startups. And since then, my entrepreneurial journey in school has begun, and I launched Top Offer, adjacent to Top Offer, 4 other startups in university. Now, I'm not going to just talk a bunch about Top Offer just yet. I wanted to first talk about the startups I didn't decide to pursue. And there were a couple. Most of them were tech startups. And I wanted to just mention one, which is Mia Technology. Now, Mia Technology was an app that I founded in third year university, along with as I was running Top Offer. And it was an artificial intelligence app that helped restaurants conduct revenue optimization. So every hour we would use our AI algorithm to calculate exactly what's the price elasticity, so that the app would tell the restaurant, you need to decrease your price by 6% to get 2 more customers, to make sure that you have full capacity every single hour throughout the day. Now, the word Mia means 100 in Swahili, which represents 100% optimized. Now, I wanted to share this experience because I find many young entrepreneurs caught between what I call the university tech startup trap. Now, the idea sounded great, but really it was not too realistic. And there were many loopholes. There were many problems with the idea, especially the actual problem that we're trying to solve, whether it be a real problem or imaginary problem. Now, and like myself, many student entrepreneurs thought, technology would be the solution. Technology is the product. And I find that myself for one, and also a lot of the young entrepreneurs that I worked with over in university, they focus too much on technology. As a result, many entrepreneurs start building softwares that had no value, or some apps that solve some imaginary pain point. And I found I wanted to talk about this experience because the audience that I'm speaking with today perhaps are not established entrepreneurs who want to figure out how to scale their business from 1 million to 3 million to 5 million. They're the people who want to find the first business opportunity to explore entrepreneurship in. And the most common mistake, and I for one has spent a lot of time due to this mistake, was I always thought technology was the solution, which it isn't. So technology is never the solution. Technology is a tool. So my advice to anybody who wants to start a tech startup is that you always have to remember technology is a tool. It's no different from from a saw, from a hammer. It's these technologies such as machine learning, AI, ChatGPT, they're no different from saws and hammers. It's what you make out of these tools that determines whether a business is going to become successful or not. And now, you might think that the app that you're building is going to solve a business problem, but you have to make sure that that's correct. So there's something that helped me along the way, which is called the design thinking process. Now, the design thinking process is very simple. First, you identify a problem, you identify a solution, then you test whether that problem is a real problem. You validate it, you speak to people, and then you execute. And most importantly, use the business model canvas. That's very important. Now, enough about my tech startup. Let's get to how this company that I built in university became what it became today. An employer to over 200 employees. Now, as I was running my tech startup, I started to evaluate, using the same model, evaluate the pain point but behind top offers clients. In 2017, we launched our first master advisory services. Before it was all bachelor advisory, and I was in third year university, and we were helping people apply for master programs. Now, we found out in 2017, the master advisory marketplace was a whole mess. It was unprofessional. It was unethical. You have people who know nothing about the business, who knows nothing about, applying to these top tier master programs, helping people apply to school. And they guarantee offers. Well, people ask me, how did you grow so fast? How did your company grow from a couple of people in the basement to one of the largest education consulting firm in Canada today? And the solution was very simple. There's no secret. The secret is to align the interests with our clients, to create actual value. So our company, we've established 3 main pillars. We wanted to create create a product that were result oriented, customer experience centric, and value creation driven. I'm going to tell you what that means. So the logic behind applying to school is very simple. If you want to get good offers, you have to have a lot of applications and you have to have good success rate on those applications. Simple logic. So we first began to explore on the success factor, which was, we got to have good materials, you got to have good essays. But that wasn't enough, because the problem with the clients that we're serving, which is the Chinese international students, they didn't quite have a strong resume and they didn't quite have strong internships, which I think a lot of our later guest speakers might talk about. And so what we did was that we decided that we had to help them. So when our total fee was less than $2,000, we actually, called the companies that we knew in Toronto and try to see if we get our clients free internship opportunities to help them apply to help them apply to school. And a lot of companies participated in this whole initiative. And with the growing popularity in our product, we were able to work with universities through their ESG initiatives to invent the work placement education program, which is a company approved, HR approved, 1 month experiential learning work placement. And we were able to do this thousands and thousands of times to get our students to participate in these work placement opportunities to these Fortune 500 companies. Now, I'm not here to sell these opportunities today because I have none to sell. And we're all sold out for all of our opportunities. But this is just something that we believed that would help the clients. And back then, if we didn't introduce this product, I don't think our sales conversion rate would drop significantly. And these products are very expensive. But I felt like that was something that was valuable for the clients, and we needed to align our interests with the clients. The second thing that we had to do was to also serve on the other half of the equation, the application number, and we did it by introducing the unlimited pass business model. So a client that comes to us doesn't have to worry about how many programs they apply to. Now, typically back then, a program application would cost around $1,000 to $1,500, sometimes even $2,000 per program. We had a program where you apply for as many programs as possible. You can apply to 10, 20, 50, 30 programs, 50 programs. I think the student that applied for the most program was like at 57 or something. And we were not making money, but that was okay because we were getting results. The combination of this, serving the basic knowledge, the basic logic behind the business model was that we were able to help our clients, with a low GPA, get into the best schools possible. Now, like for instance, Columbia University, our lowest GPA was a 2.6 out of 4. University of Toronto's master program was a 1.9 out of 4. We get them into these schools, and we're able to get success results to our clients, and they were very happy about it. So we grew because the market approved our philosophy. And then we have to focus on how to be experience centric. So we're the first to provide 24-hour services, and then we listen to our customer to continuously improve on our services. And another initiative that we're continuing to invest in is to close the information gap between the market and between us and the market, so that there's no room for these unethical services that we try to eliminate. And last but not least, we wanted to lower our price to make sure that more people, more students will have the opportunity to be able to benefit from the service that would actually help them in the long run. So now if you look at the prices in Eastern Canada, typically non-commissioned service would be around 5,000 to 7,000 Canadian dollars. If you look at these services in everywhere else in the world, I bet you we have the cheapest services here because we've worked with the market and with our competitors. I don't think they willingly, but lower the prices of this marketplace. And it's to the benefit of everyone in this marketplace. And then we built a social network called the Chinese Professional Society, which we just launched an event actually a couple of days ago to help students work together and develop their local Canadian network, so they could have the resources and the connections to succeed in Canada like we do today. Now, I want to give some advices because I'm running out of time. Give some advices to people who are here.
Yes, you do. You probably have 2 more minutes.
I have 2 more minutes. Great.
Yes.
So to some young entrepreneurs who want to start the business, now I have 3 advices. One is you have to serve the market by creating value. There are a lot of opportunities, where you can make quick money, but if you want to become an entrepreneur, you have to create value, and you have to align your value with the customer and with whoever you're serving. So I think that's the number 1 rule, that if you want to run a successful business, this is the number 1 rule you have to abide by. Second, you have to understand your business model. And the example I gave, me running a tech startup, which didn't work so well, and I think I failed because the business model that I was running was not clear. So understanding business model is, I think, the number 2 rule. Number 1 is to create value. And the third advice is to be prepared for the most difficult journey. Because I often hear people say, I'm going to start, I want to be a consultant. I want to work in the field of finance. If it doesn't work out, I'm going to start my own business. It will never work that way. This is the most difficult journey you're going to have to go through. And this is, every second of your life you're working. So you got to be prepared if you want to become an entrepreneur. There is no way, there's no such thing as a half, a part-time entrepreneur. It doesn't exist. And I have 3 life philosophies. So the first one is to set clear goals and set priorities. Know what you want to achieve and only look at that goal. Second is know the rules as well as, so well that you know how to break the rules. For instance, as students, and some parents may not agree, you don't have to go to class. you don't have to attend every single course there is. You got to know what you want to do, what your goals are, to see, you know, which classes you can skip, which classes you have to go to. And there are many rules that you can go around that would make your life much easier. And, you know, I don't see why we shouldn't do this. And the third philosophy is never take no as an answer. And actually, most people are you know, their first reaction to new ideas is to reject it, is to, you know, tell you that it's not going to work. But I don't think that's the case. And I think if I have to think, you know, around everything, all the decisions I've made, the best decisions that I've made was around not taking no as an answer, to proceed with what you're ambitious about, to proceed with your goals, and lastly, just to enjoy the ride, because, you know, it's a fun journey. Whatever you do, growing up, you know, starting your own business, we're going to a career. It's a fun journey. Whatever you do, I think you should absolutely enjoy the ride, because you can only get on the ride once, and you might as well enjoy it, you know. So anyways, this is my 2 cents, and I'm here, you know, happy to answer any questions.
Thank
Are
you.
there be
Thank you,
questions
Eddie.
now? I'm not quite sure.
Sure, thank you. Thanks a lot. I think it's a quite impressive and very a fresh approach to life, to your journey. And I know that I can tell you have a passion for startup. You take no for answers. So my first question is, how many CEOs have you chased before you get to the other CEOs who wanted to listen to you?
Oh, Jesus.
I bet many.
Yes. So there were many. I don't think like at least 24, at least like over 20 CEOs and like owners, business owners, anybody. And I'll tell you what, actually the worst that I had was one of the, I forgot her name, was like as a lady from Dragon's Den, and we stopped her. She's like, no, too many people try to stop me, go away. Like, very rude people. But I mean, I don't blame her. She is very busy. But we did stop a couple of dragons too. And you know, we got the contact of a couple of very you know, entrepreneurial friendly people. And I had also a senior executive from Deloitte who did a consulting project for me, actually, with me, not for me. But the point is, if you're young and if you're in high school or early on university, you get so much free advice from these people, because they're actually there to help. Like if someone came to me asking,
Want to mentor you, right? I
yes.
know they want to share. So do you have dragons to invest your company too?
No, we actually took no investment, because
I
my
see.
philosophy was, if I didn't want to invest my own money completely into my own company, why should I expect someone else to invest in it? And this was a more of a cash flow business instead of a value, you know, valuation driven business model, which I'm not too keen on.
Okay. Well, I think there's one note I definitely, you know, agree with you, that you talk about the tech. You want to do tech startup. Normally
Yes.
people stuck into the tech, the solution, but it's a tool. What's important, it's what, you know, it's what you make out of it.
Yes.
And then how you actually solve the real problems, right? Real life problems.
Yes.
I think that's probably, you keep that closer to your heart.
Yes.
Right, Eddie?
Yes,
well, so great to have you with us. And I'm sure we have so many other questions. I know you have some time limitation, and but we'll probably take some questions in the chat box, and we'll probably send over to you and share in a group or something like that. And then love to invite you back to share more information, because I have so many questions I want to ask you.
Sure, pleasure.
You're non-conventional.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So next, welcome. Thank you again for taking the time. And so we're going to move to our next extraordinary speaker. Let's welcome Ruby Zhang. And let's prepare to be captivated by the brilliance of Ruby Zhang, a PhD student in economics at Harvard University. Her groundbreaking research, published in Nature, stems from her work with data from Meta, a graduate with 3 majors from the University of Chicago. Ruby's intellectual journey showcases the power of relentless curiosity and academic prowess. So please welcome Ruby to this virtual podium. The stage is yours. You have about 20 minutes to share your story.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah, and thank you for having me here. Yeah, great presentation, Eddie. So I'm going to pivot basically in the completely opposite direction, whereas like I went down fully into doing academia, which also is a path I think, unless you are really sure you want to do, like, would not advise. And then I'll speak like more about like, I guess just finding out and getting to the point where you realize that yes, like this is something that you want to do, and then how eventually I got there. Okay, great. So let me share my presentation. Okay. All right, can everyone see this? Let me put it into.
Yes, we can.
All right, so I guess I'll go in the order where I'll talk a bit about my background, but I won't spend too much time on my pre-university life. I feel like for me, a lot of like my self-discovery really started at university in terms of exactly what I wanted to do. And then that's when I started trying a lot of things out. So that's what I'm going to be mainly focusing on. And then afterwards, I'll talk about how I ended up doing economic research after university, and then how I decided to stay in academia and then pursue that path. So a little bit about myself. I think, again, like many people that are here, I'm also a bit of a second generation immigrant. So I was born and I grew up in Qingdao until I was 5. And then I immigrated to Toronto with my parents in 2002. We lived at Warden and Steele's, lots of Chinese food, very close to the TNT. And so it was an environment that was familiar, which I am grateful for that. And so I never felt like I didn't belong. And then at the same time, also very different from what I was used to, especially going to ESL, etc. And then growing up, I was always very into reading. I was very introverted. I really did not like talking to people in general. It's gone a lot better now. And then I would usually be reading fiction. I was really into astronomy. I was really into plants at some point. And then my parents were really supportive. They didn't really care exactly which way I pivoted to. There was nothing that they really required that I do. And whatever I was interested in, they would buy me like a ton of books just to be like, okay, you're interested in this. We'll like buy you this telescope that you asked for, or like these books that we found, just to nurture my interest. And for that, looking back, I am very grateful, because I felt like I had full freedom to just sort of look around, explore, ask questions without pressure, and then feeling like I needed to pursue a certain path. And then during my high school years, I became interested in math and chemistry. And then during that time, I also attended like different summer programs. And so, for example, Shad Valley, and there was another one called Deep River, and they were all science oriented. Shad was also a bit on the entrepreneur side and business side as well. But Deep River was really like a science oriented summer program. And I had the chance to work with like other high school kids, and I learned about trees that summer. Also, something else, like even though now I did not end up being an ecologist, I look back on very fondly. And so I guess from a young age, I was generally like pretty interested in just learning about new things, and then really getting the chance to like read or like go in the field for that. And so that was all during high school. I think by the end of high school, I thought I was gonna like do science, maybe do math, and then do something research oriented. And I realized for me that was things I was like genuinely interested in. So I would say that during my time at university, when I went to U Chicago, was really when I had to think about like, whoa, what am I gonna do with the rest of my life? Because I think, at least for me, before going to university, it felt like in general, living at home, living with parents, I don't know, I was not very like entrepreneurial. I just like enjoyed like learning about things, but I didn't really think about too much like, oh, in the long run, like, what do I want to do with this? Like, where do I want to take this? And then at U Chicago, I think I was suddenly exposed to like a very, very different environment. So I think, including when I was growing up, and then all the schools I went to, it was like majority like second generation, like Asian immigrant kids as well, just like me and my family. And so it was very comfortable. And then suddenly I was like, I had to go to the US. It was totally different like demographics. There were people from everywhere, and including from different states in the US that have a completely different vibe, people with completely different upbringings. And so it was it was initially like very overwhelming when going, but I think it also exposed me to peers that thought about problems or had certain ways of looking at the world that I had never encountered before. And so for me, it was like a very intellectually fulfilling environment during my 4 years. And I think partly that was through my classes and being able to take classes in all sorts of different majors. I think, yeah, I really loved going to class. And so I would like take classes in like different fields. I started off in math, and then I started taking economics classes, which I realized was really like an application of math, but to social problems, while trying out like statistics. And eventually I took music classes, like social science classes where we had to read like Marx and Weber, and then also history classes as well, some of which ended up being my favorite. And then I think throughout all of that, I think talking to fellow peers, talking to professors, but also talking to mentors. So students that were older than me, I think throughout that whole time was extremely helpful. And I think generally true, like even now, probably in life, it's just helpful to find like mentors that you relate to and like are kind and like give you advice and know you on a personal level, which sometimes that can be professors, but of course I think a lot of times it's also very daunting to talk to professors. And I think when you're an undergraduate, a lot of the time like some professors are just very busy on their research and they just don't like mentoring people. Like that's like some professors are just not that nice, but then there are some who really are, and I think those is like you really should grab onto and have like, and it's like a relationship that will really like last even beyond your undergrad years. And I think during that time, I also had to think about, oh, like, what do I want to do in the real world that's not school? So I didn't really know what it was like. And so every summer I tried something different. I think even though I was like, oh, I know I'm like more introverted, I like reading and doing research, I was still like, well, I should try working and just see what it's like. And so for every summer, the first summer I worked at a nonprofit. Second summer, I ended up doing research. And then during the third summer, I decided to try investment banking as an M&A analyst. And I actually learned a lot, and it was a very fun experience. And it actually, the topic that I ended up working on ended up being my undergraduate thesis, and ended up motivating my topic. And what I realized about myself is, oh, like there is this industry and this topic that I think is interesting from an intellectual standpoint. And so I was thinking, oh, then maybe like as what kind of research might look at that. And then I discovered that within economics research, there's also subfields. And for example, one called industrial organization that specifically looks at how firms interact when the environment changes. That can either be like competitively, or it could be due to a policy or regulatory change. And that was something that I discovered as a result of having an internship. So I think it's really good to have a very like interdisciplinary experience and like try new things. And I would say at the end of college, a lot of points I've probably going to reiterate. I think in general, it's one of the times where you have so much flexibility to learn, like not only learn in terms of taking classes, because honestly, I think never again in your life will you have the chance to take classes in anything. And that's true because once you apply to a graduate program, it's going to be specialized. And during undergrad, you can take anything from like music to history to math to statistics, and also like meet different people, see what different fields are like, and also try out different extracurriculars. And something else I would say from undergrad is just being open to diversity in terms of like internships, like clubs and experiences, but also talking to peers as well. So I think another good thing about like taking really interdisciplinary disciplinary classes or different clubs is you get to meet different types of people. Like I think I would not say, that I want all my friends to just be like people in the math department. That would be like really, it would all be sort of like one way of thinking, one sort of topic to talk about. Whereas I have friends who are into philosophy and they would have like the most interesting discussions and ways of like looking at questions. I was like, wow, I didn't realize this was like a question to be looked at, but it was extremely eye-opening. And then that sort of also goes to my next point of it's a good time to build a wide network. And I think a lot of people I still keep in touch with now. And then I think related to my later research on social capital is there's strength in weak links. So even someone, if you weren't very close to them before, years later, like people reconnect and reach out again. And it's also a time when everyone is shifting in terms of their careers and where they're going in life. And so that's another thing that I came away with. And then the last one, of course, is looking for mentors and then not being afraid to reach out. I think as someone who's very introverted, I really, really did not like cold emailing people. I really did not like talking to people I didn't know. I'm like the opposite of entrepreneurial, but I think a lot of times during undergrad, I was like forced to like, okay, just like send this email, it's fine. No one's going to respond in the worst case scenario. So that was something that I was forced to do, but is extremely beneficial. Okay, so after my undergrad, so during senior year, I think I realized that I was still at the end of the day interested in research, but I had pivoted to economics by this point. So research in the social sciences. And I'll talk a little bit about what exactly economics is and why I'm studying it, just because when I went into undergrad, I didn't know what economics was. I had never done it in my life before then. I was very much like, oh, math and science and like plants and astronomy. And so economics is quantitatively studying how humans behave in response to incentives. And that's it. And everything that sort of underpins like firms, everything that underpins even like countries, like heads of state, and also just on an individual basis, like as consumers, as households, we all behave in ways that are incentivized, right? We all optimize, we all do some sort of optimization. And economics is a framework to try to understand, well, like, if rationally that is how people behave, then, how do we make systems that are most welfare optimizing? So this is a little bit vague, so I'll just give some examples. And so the questions can actually range really, really wildly. So there are like questions that people might think are like boring economist questions, like, oh, what is the optimal tax level going to be? Or like, oh, what is the inflation going to look like tomorrow? And again, inflation is also driven by expectations, and that comes from like people's belief. But then there's also like tons of questions like, oh, like, does Google have market power? Like, CEOs, do they get paid too much? And why is that the case? Like, why does the market make it so that they're paid very highly? How do you improve health insurance programs? But even like questions such as like, why do we marry the people that we do? Like, is that something that we can model to like, what degree is that homophily? I was actually just listening to like a podcast about an economist who specifically studies marriage markets. I know it's strange to call marriage a market, but anything related to human behavior really can be viewed from an economic lens. And I think for me, that was really interesting because that's not something that I thought could be modeled. And I think part of the appeal is that there's a lot of humans in the world, and we create a lot of organizations, whether it's at the micro level or the macro level. And so there's a lot of behaviors and questions there to study. And so I think Esther Duflo, who won the Nobel Prize in Development Economics, had said that economists are like plumbers. Like, they fix things little by little, and then they see what works, what doesn't work, and then they try to fix it some more. I feel like economists are kind of like detectives in that they really want to understand exactly like what is going on, what is the consequence of, let's say, like letting a merger go through, or closing trade-off, for example. But also entrepreneurs, in the sense that there's a lot of phenomenon that's going on, and economists love to look for it, like very, very like deep buried phenomenon that people might not know. Like, for example, historically, like in England, like after Queen Victoria's husband died, she stopped holding balls. What happened to the marriage market? And then subsequently to social inequality in England after that, which the Economist found an effect. It's like it's honestly surprising how that the effect is as big as it is and that it exists at all. And so I think through this journey, I would say research is entrepreneurial in a different way, in that there's usually a lot of questions that can't be answered, because if it could be answered, it would have already been answered. And then you have to do all sorts of digging, either looking for data, thinking about new methods. And this is happening like all the time. So it is quite daunting, but it is also like a fun process, especially if you find the thing that really like motivates you and you really want to study it. And so with that said, I'll talk a bit about my time doing social capital research. And so after undergrad, I started working at a lab based at Harvard, which examined socioeconomic inequality and specifically economic mobility in the United States, which had fallen drastically in the last 40 years. So the lab previously had published papers where they used micro-level census data to calculate economic mobility at the tract level, and then also by demographic. And this is all available online, and it like made a really big splash, because it really shone to light, using data like in different places, how unequal it was and how much it differed by demographic background. So our role was, we then had a partnership with Meta, where we used metadata to construct users' socioeconomic status. And that's something that we inferred using machine learning from characteristics that were in the metadata, and then also like with some help from engineers at Meta as well. And then we examined every user's Facebook graph, friendship map, and then graphed out the distribution of their friends' socioeconomic status. So basically, your social capital is how well off your friends are, as opposed to yourself. And then we inferred users' locations, their schools, their colleges, etc. And then we basically related all of these constructed measures back to the lab's previously published measures on economic mobility. And so there were a couple of like small quasi experiments that we try to implement. But overall, this was then added also to the Opportunity Atlas, and it basically revealed a lot of facts about, first of all, just the distribution of social capital across the United States, like having this measure, because it really was not measured before. And this is probably like the best data and the most comprehensive data to measure that, and then being able to relate it to past work done by the lab in terms of economic mobility. And then also in the meantime, I built a really wonderful community of fellow researchers I'm still very good friends with to this day. And then so after those 2 years, I guess so I'm still in the same place now. I continued and started my PhD at Harvard in economics. And so that's just some photos of my cohort. They're all very lovely. And I'll give a bit of a background on the possible careers after an econ PhD. So as I said, like I would caveat that a PhD is sort of a road that, unless you are really, really into research, a lot of times it is like frustrating. There will be a lot of ups and downs, because at the end of the day, it's about an intellectual pursuit. And so I feel like unless you are sure that you are really into research, and that of course requires like knowing yourself and like introspection, then like I think a PhD in whatever field you may want will be right for you. But if not though, then there's also like, I think there's lots of other ways of making impact. And I think this is a trade-off I think about like all the time, in that in some ways, like doing research is like, you're not really making impact immediately. You're not like a policymaker, or you're not like running a company where you're literally making a product and you see the impact very immediately. So research is sort of like, it's more of a slow burn, as opposed to immediately you can see results. So after grad school, so the most common is being an academic or a professor doing research. And so this could include econ departments or business schools and policy schools. And now more and more so, a lot of people are going to the private sector, still in some research capacity. So whether that's economic consulting or doing economist/data science jobs, which a lot of firms now are looking specifically for economists to do like research or like run experiments, measure things like price elasticity, implement incentives, or also finance. And then lastly, there's also the public sector, which has a lot of research opportunities. So this includes in the Fed and central banks, and then also agencies like the IMF or the World Bank. Okay, so enough about econ. I'll end, and also I think I'm running out of time, but I will end the last bit with some general reflections that I've had. This is by no means exhaustive. So I would say, especially for younger folks in the audience, take the time to explore, but also find something that really internally motivates you. And then once you find that thing, be very intentional about goal setting and then how you want to get there. I think, everyone's time is sort of limited on this earth. Unfortunately, there's only like so much we can do and then learn like in this time. So of course, it's easier said than done. I think it's really not an easy thing to do, to find something that motivates you and you want to do for the rest of your life. And so a lot of the times there's been just a ton of introspection. I think there's been more and more introspection as I've gotten older. Even though it seems like I'm very set in a career path, there's so much optionality within it. Like in terms of, what do I want to find spend my time researching? What do I find meaningful? What are the questions that I think are really interesting? Because I'm going to be investing a lot of time into this. So I asked, what am I doing like all the time? Like probably like every other day. And also just there will be ups and downs with, I think, like every single career. And then like there will be moments when I'm like, I wonder what would have happened if I like done this instead. And I think that is like quite common. And then I would say one of my favorite questions that one of my friends asked, and we're very good friends from the program, and we sometimes just like check in with each other, is he likes to ask, what % of the way are you to being the person that you want to be? Which is like a really big question, because you have to think about what % of the way are you there, but then you're realizing that what % of the way are you there to this person that like your goal setting, right? So whatever that destination is, it's sort of up to you to know and sort of up to you to decide. And then you can see how you want to get there and whether you're satisfied with like where you are with the path that you've taken. So I would say in general, there's also just like a ton of path dependence and luck in life. I think I was very lucky that I grew up in the environment that I did, that my parents like immigrated, and that also was very supportive of all of my different interests. And then like the luck of being able to attend Chicago and then meeting like people that really opened my eyes up to different ways of thinking, and then having all of the opportunities there. So I would say in general, just like it's good to be entrepreneurial and then seize opportunities when you can. And that's still something that I think I'm working on quite a bit, and I'm sure will be for the rest of my life. So yeah, I guess the thing I want to end with is there is a lot of path dependence, but there is also a lot of ways that your life can go all the time. And so a lot of introspection all the time, but also can be very fun. And yes, so that would be it. I would be happy to answer any questions that people have either now or later.
Oh, sure. Thank you. Thank you, Ruby. Is that your cup at the end, the one that right there is your favorite cup?
Oh, that is my aunt's cup. Yes.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you so much for your insight. And I think that people can see, I think in the audience, that you are full of curiosity. You're a great learner. You're a great researcher. And I think that you're also very grateful, to those people who have helped you. And because you have such a lovely attitude and personality, I just can't see anyone who doesn't want to help you. And plus, right, you analyze data from Meta. You have this crystal ball to tell the future. That's what I see. So I know that I asked the question to Eddie. I'm going to ask one question and I really want you to stay because there will be more questions from the audience at the Q&A session. Because you talk about this, your research, right, published in Nature is a remarkable achievement in our point of view. So could you provide insights into the specific area of economics that your research focused on, how your work with the data from Meta contributed to this groundbreaking outcome?
Yeah, we'll be happy to. So the specific field that the research is in is part of labor economics, labor and public economics. And so basically labor and public economics is a field within econ that one is microeconomics and also is applied microeconomics. And so instead of being theory-based, it's very much driven by data. And also related to usually household level, so individual outcomes in life, and then how different policies can affect that. So for example, like what happens if you change the minimum wage? What happens if you tax households differently? So these are like very classic questions in like labor and public, but also things like education would also count under labor and public. And then so for this, I guess a big one is, economic mobility. How do we improve that? And then the first step is, okay, well, let's look at some of the determinants of economic mobility. For example, like social capital. How much does that factor into it? How related is it? Even controlling for other variables, like other factors like background, demographics, etc. And then I guess like once you get that result, which we got, of course, they're very strongly correlated and strongly predictive. Then it's like, okay, then from a policy standpoint, like what can you do? And then so I think apart from constructing these like national level indices, and then showing like, hey, look how closely social capital is related to economic mobility, we also then zoomed in on a lot of case studies. And so, for example, this would be in schools or in school districts that tried to integrate and like purposely like change the socioeconomic status of the school so that it has a much more varied distribution. And then seeing like, why did it work in some schools? Why did it not work in other schools? Which we found there was like a lot of variance in terms of how well it worked. So as you can see, it's sort of like goes in deeper and deeper every time. And then I think, of course, then there's follow-on research to that as well. In terms of the data and working with Facebook, I think as with any large data set and probably any economic question, it's daunting because there's so much that you can do with the data, right? There's like all sorts of things that you could really dig into and look at with the data. And I think having the experience of working with professors at the lab who were like so sharp in terms of identifying like, oh, like these are the key questions, these are the key patterns to look at. And then every time we present them with the result, they would say, oh, like there are probably like these things in the data that are motivating this result. And then probably these things are really what explain the story behind what you're seeing. So I think in general, in applied microeconomics, a lot of it is about digging into the data, but in the right directions so that it leads you to the answers that are most likely. Because of course, with data, there's so many things that you can do. And, there is like a lot of ways, that you can statistically explain something. But that doesn't mean that it's the right direction.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. So I already see some questions in the chat box, and so please stay with us. We're gonna answer those questions. These are for Ruby to answer. Thank you. Please stay with us. We'll
Thank you.
chat with you shortly after this. Okay, so speaking of we heard from Ruby. She was talking about she's very interested in different fields. So speaking of different fields, right? Next we have Kate Mall as our speaker, and we like to dive into the world of entrepreneurship with Kate. So the visionary founder of Into Archive is the name of the company. She's a graduate from RISD, Rhode Island School of Design. So it's a designing university, top one in US, and actually probably across the globe. With a profound passion for fashion and art, Kate has crafted a unique e-commerce platform connecting luxury vintage stores worldwide. Her journey from a creative mind to a successful entrepreneur promises to be both insightful and inspiring. So while the company sources for many celebrities, right, such as Kendall Jenner and Cardi B, it also has been mentioned in magazines like Fast Company and Elle USA. So Into Archive participants in unique collaborations with companies and a roster of over 250 influencers. We talk about the social influencers online to market and futurize the cycle of vintage fashion business. So now let's welcome Kate to the stage, and the stage is yours, Kate. Please open the camera. Welcome.
Hey, thanks, Mom. My name is Kate, and my mom is the moderator here, so I have to do a really good job because she's watching. I want to give a shout out to Ruby and Eddie and say thank you so much for that. I don't quite have such an extensive presentation, but I have a few photos and a website to show you guys today. So I'm going to start by showcasing a little small banner that I've sort of made. Hopefully this is showing on the screen.
Yes.
Does that show for everybody? Okay, amazing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about myself, where I grew up and sort of how I grew up, and then go more into the company and what it focuses on and what we're sort of doing with our creative space. A bit about myself. I grew up in Toronto, just like a lot of you, and I kind of took a very rebellious route by going to art school, which is not the most exciting thing for most Asian families. But I had decided to myself, okay, if I'm going to spend 4 years of my life, I probably want to do something that's pretty compelling and interesting to myself. So I wanted to go to an environment that was like very stimulating, and a lot of people were maybe like-minded thinkers. I was a little bit wrong about that when I went to RISD, because I realized so much of the program was about doing a mix of academia, but also understanding more about your art and craft. So a lot of students had to spend time doing electives or just doing a lot of extra sort of things on the side. I had one friend that was doing neuroscience and also painting as a dual degree at the same time, which was wild to me because you get to use your left side brain and your right side brain at the same time. And I wasn't quite so smart, but I had majored in graphic design and spent about 4 years getting into that, getting a little bit into Rhino and like 3D designing. And that sort of propelled me to my first work experience at WeWork. This is when Adam Newman was, at the height of the company, and WeWork was really growing. So I had stepped in as part of the creative team and did a lot of work with creating paintings for the spaces that were opening up sort of every week, or doing, wallpapers and all kinds of neon signage. So I spent a lot of time kind of in Photoshop, Illustrator, and refining these sorts of harder skills to get to know and understand how people build out interior spaces. And after that point, I had spent a lot of time, especially in my childhood, collecting. I think that was something that was super compelling to me. I go on eBay back in the day. I don't know if you guys have similar experiences or not, but you would find crazy things like you could buy these Japanese stickers for like 100 pieces a pack and maybe like $10 online. And I would think to myself, like, this is such an exciting moment because you could essentially go to school and show off to all your friends that you have an amazing pack of stickers. I sort of sold them in school as well when I was younger, but I had been collecting a ton on eBay. And through that experience, that kind of led into this company today. So this company is called Into Archive. This is sort of a small banner to show our style and kind of what we believe in. And we specifically tap into like the luxury vintage space, which is quite a big market now. If you look around you, you'll see there's quite a big trend of people collecting and sort of, harboring tons of Hermes bags or these kinds of luxury items that I think tap into a lot about who we are and what we look for when we sort of purchase things that represent us as humans. This company itself is composed of about 7 people. And I oversee a lot of the investment side, a lot of the vision side, and sort of bringing in the right team members to execute a lot of the things that we want to do. And we've come to about a 5,000 to 6,000 in terms of numbers of items that we've collected to this day that are considered very cool or interesting luxury assets. And what we do with those assets is we list them online and we also rent them out to a lot of celebrities. So if you are updated at all on Instagram, if you look at Kendall Jenner's Instagram, a lot of their outfits are curated by our company and, with a lot of the suppliers and people that work with Into Archive.
Kate, I know, I'm from the IT industry, right? So I don't know much about fashion, but I think I learned a lot from Kate. And I noticed that your logo is green. So maybe you can share with us your vision about the green means it's a green company. It's environmental friendly, right? It's a vintage. It can be repurchased, reused over and over again. It also reserves the value of that vintage piece, right? So share with us what you see from that point, your vision about this green company.
I think the color green itself, yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory in that it's like environmentally friendly and it kind of goes into that direction. But I think if you look at our, the logo that we use, the type that we use, and the kind of Instagram that we curate, I think our idea is really to focus on Gen Z and to bring around identity into the framework, because a lot of companies in this industry don't have quite a strong sense of identity. They're more considered either a tech platform or a kind of space where you're just exchanging items. And for me, I really like to consider the logo as a way to represent the sort of modern futuristic take that we want to continue talking about when it comes to luxury vintage, which is kind of ironic because you're talking about items from 20, 30 years ago that have been passed down by generations. But for us, we're pretty compelled and interested in ways to recycle it and showcase to you how you can wear it in your modern closet. Yeah.
Thank you, Kate. Yes, I know that absolutely you open or actually create some new demand or net new demand for the Gen Z, right? So that's a great job. Thank you, Kate. Please stay with us because we have some questions or somebody asked, and we're gonna do that in the Q&A session. So next, probably our youngest speaker among this group. His name is Cohen Zhen. He's a computer science 4th-year student at the University of Waterloo, and his journey through co-op experiences at Amazon, Minted, Covio, and Keychip Automobile has shaped him into a sought-after software contractor with Covio. Now, Cohen's study speaks volumes about the fusion of academic excellence and real-world application. And his major was actually mechatronic engineering at Waterloo University, but then transferred to computer science at the same university a year and a half later. I find it very intriguing. So I'm sure there's some people would ask, when you change your majors, right? What was the reason you made that decision? So we want to hear more from you. Cohen, please come to the center stage and share your story with us. Welcome.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for the introduction. Let me just share my screen. Okay. All right, does everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So just a quick introduction about myself. I'm Cohen. I'm 20 years old and I'm a 4th-year computer science student at the University of Waterloo. And I just included this picture because I thought it was funny. I took it like kind of recently. And yeah, I just wanted to come on here and share my experience, like getting my co-ops and past internships. So I'm not really going to talk about my high school life, but I guess I'll like quickly say what I did. So back in high school, like I was a part of like some clubs like DECA, and I went to SHAD. And I would say when I went to SHAD in the end of grade 11, that was sort of like my turning point.
because I finally met like really ambitious people. And I thought like, oh, if these guys can do it and like they're, I'm hanging out with them, then I thought like, oh, maybe I could push myself and like accomplish like great things too. So after grade 11, I like got my marks up really high for grade 12, and then I applied to Waterloo, got in. And yeah, I started in mechatronics because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I actually hated computer science. I took computer science in high school, and I hated how like I just had to sit at the computer all day and like debug code. Like that just didn't appeal to me at first. So that's why my dad told me, okay, just go into mechatronics. It's kind of like mechanical engineering. So I was like, okay. But then once I started taking the courses, I was instantly like, no, this is not for me. So I started doing software co-ops. And what I noticed is that on Waterloo's job board, like 80% of the jobs are like software related. So I thought like, okay, let me just like align myself with the market and just do what's like most in demand. So that's why I sort of started doing software work. And then I ended up working at Kirchhoff Automotive, which is where my dad works, and then followed by Coveo and Minted. And then after that, I transferred to computer science. And the story of how I did this was kind of interesting because like I never planned to do this. It was just my friend who said, oh, all you have to do is send an email and you can go into computer science. Like you can like apply to transfer. And I was like, okay, I'll just do it. And then I forgot about it. And then I got in. So then I was like, okay, let's go into computer science. But I thought that like, even if I was still in mechatronics engineering, I would have done just fine. I was still getting like software co-ops. And I think that like, in terms of getting software co-ops, like your major, specifically being in computer science, it doesn't really matter that much. As long as you're like in an adjacent major, like engineering or math, like you're still in a really good position to compete with like computer science students. And even if you're not like in an adjacent major, like you could still self-study these topics and then try to apply to software like jobs on your own. So yeah, that's sort of my timeline. I'll go into detail about like what I did at each of these companies. So I started off working at Kirchhoff Automotive, like near my house in Aurora, Ontario. And yeah, it was my first co-op. And then the funny thing about this was like the roles of my like co-op weren't really defined. So I was sort of just like writing code for like a web app in the morning. And then at in the afternoon, like when I got tired of writing code, I would just like go cut some steel or aluminum with a saw. And I would just do like whatever mechanical tasks like my boss wanted me to do at the time. And yeah, I think like during that time, like after work, I was like working on like software projects. So I was sort of like building out my resume like on the side while doing this co-op. And that's sort of like what set me up to get my next co-ops. So my next one was at this company called Coveo. And what Coveo does is like they make AI search engines for other businesses. So like for example, they make search engines for like Glassdoor, Dell, and like LCBO. And yeah, so what I did was I was a consultant at that company. So I designed search pages for Coveo's clients. Like I would just go into meetings with them. They would tell me like, oh, how they want their search page to look. And then I would just do that for them using like Coveo's front end frameworks. So I worked with JavaScript, React, and Vue. And I actually found this job like on LinkedIn because by this time I was applying like externally and on Waterloo's job board. And I wasn't having like any success with Waterloo's job board because like as someone with only one co-op, like I found it like pretty competitive because you're always competing with like the upper years. So I found that like going externally helped me a lot with finding a job. And then after that, I worked for this company called Minted, which is like an e-commerce company that sells art and furniture. And I worked on their backend infrastructure, mainly with like Python. And this was the one and only job I found on Waterloo Works. And yeah, I was pretty lucky to find this because they said that they only like show their like job like on Waterloo. And yeah, but right after I was working for Minted, I transferred to computer science. And I actually dropped out of co-op because in computer science, you have the choice, whereas in engineering, you have to stay in co-op. And I thought that I think the main reason why I dropped out of co-op was because, oh, I already have 3 internships and I can just find them like on my own now. I have enough experience like applying externally. And also I felt like in the past, like Waterloo's like job board didn't really help me that much. So I thought like, oh, moving forward, I could use the flexibility of not being in co-op and then move forward. And then yeah, right after I worked in Minted in 2022, I worked in Amazon in 2023. So just this past summer. And yeah, so I guess I'll just talk about like my experience applying there and how it was working there. So I applied on the website like in August 2022. And by that time, I was still working at Minted. So I was like applying and doing their interviews while I was still working at the previous co-op. And then Amazon's interviews are like known to be a bit easier than like the other big tech companies. So it's just like a coding test, like an online assessment, and then followed by one final 1 hour interview. It would happen in September 2022. And then I received the offer in October 2022. And yeah, that was the offer. And then as for the internship itself, like it was 3 months, and I spent the first month actually just writing a design document. I didn't even code at all. And the first month was like really chill. Like I didn't do that much work. But then the next 2 months, it was all about like coding and doing what I said I was going to do in the design doc. And that was like super stressful. I was like working on the weekends. I was like working like 7 days a week. And yeah, but I got it done. And I was mainly just like coding with like AWS and like Java and TypeScript. And I think the main reason why like it took me that long to complete it was that I was just unfamiliar with like Amazon's internal tooling. And I just had to spend extra time to learn that. But yeah, overall, like it wasn't that like, oh, my manager's expectations were too high. It was just sort of that like, I didn't really understand what was going on, and I was kind of slacking in the first month. So yeah, I picked it up. And then another thing I want to mention about like working at Amazon, and I guess working at big tech companies in general, is that they often hire a lot of interns for the summer. So I know the Vancouver office for Amazon hired about 300, and I only met like probably like 50 of them. So working at these big companies is a good chance to like network with these other interns, because these other interns, either they'll continue working at Amazon, or they'll like work at other big tech companies, and then it's good to know them and like, yeah, see the perspective. And yeah, eventually like anytime you want to like go to like another big tech company, like you know people that like you've interned with in the past. So yeah, other than that, the Vancouver weather is very good in the summer. And these are some pictures I took. I included like a picture of the big sushi because like in Vancouver, I spent a lot of money eating out. And I justified this by saying like, okay, I'm networking, so this is okay. This will like pay itself. And also my past 2 internships were remote. So I was only like living at home and saving my money. So this time, like when I was working in person, I sort of like splurged a little bit. And yeah, so this is like one of my last slides. My presentation is kind of short, but my insights about doing these internships was that I think the first one is the hardest to get, because there's a focus on past projects, grades, and behavioral questions, because you don't have any other internships. So the easiest way to get your first internship is just to know someone and like have someone refer you. But as for senior internships, they have a focus on past internships, technical questions like data structures and algorithms, and there won't be so much of a focus on grades or past projects. So I think for like applying for big tech companies, they're usually not looking for like a specific technology like Python or C++. Usually they're just looking for like generalists who can learn fast. So because a company like Amazon, they all have their internal technology that you would have to learn and that you wouldn't know otherwise, or you couldn't really prepare for it. So in terms of applying to these companies, the prime interview season is usually from August to December for summer internships next year. That's for like US big tech companies. In terms of like Canadian small companies, usually you can get away with applying like just 4 to 1 months earlier. And yeah, my last point is that internships, they are like a 3 to 4 month interview to see whether that company wants to give you a full-time offer. So it's like after you finish the interview, it's like the internship itself is another interview. It's like the more important interview. And also like doing this internship is a chance for you to see whether you'd want to work there full time. So it's good to just do a bunch of internships just to see like where you'd like to work the most. And yeah, so I was working on this, but some general insights I had was that like I think one thing that was crucial to my success is just like the compound effect of just doing the same thing over like 5 years. Like when I started university, like I just went into software engineering, and I never really pivoted to like another like career or like type of like work. So I always just chose like software engineering. And then I think like just constantly doing that over and over like will really help you build up like your skills and make you like really desirable to like these companies that want to hire. And my other point is that like I think the tech industry is like more of a meritocracy like than other industries. And what that means is that like they hire based on your ability to like do the job rather than like, oh, like your networking skills or like your connections. Of course they help, but like a lot of my time like applying to these jobs, I was just applying online, and like I didn't know anybody from any of these companies except my first one. And yeah, I got an interview from them. So I think like that's one reason why like I like the tech industry. And I guess it's good because like a lot of the people in this industry, like they're introverts, so they don't really want to like network. So yeah, it's good. And yeah, that's all I had for my presentation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, Cohen. I think that, I can tell you've worked for many big tech companies, right? And you talk about this hire based on ability rather than connections. And just from my observation, I'm sure we're actually already seeing some questions in the chat box. Please stay with us. But I do wanted to mention that, I can see that how you approach networking during your academic journey, right? Because you said you can apply online, but I think there's some I guess way that how you have secured these jobs in the big companies has speak the volume of how you approach the hiring process and how you apply. I'm sure that networking, right, building your connections can play a crucial role in the career advancement. I'm not sure if you agree with me, but that's how I see it. Although you don't, probably less likely to believe what I have observed.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, connections do play a strong role. Yeah.
Okay, don't worry. We have some questions. I already see some questions they want to ask you. So please stay with us, and we'll review the question together, and please help us answer those questions. All right, so we have seen the entrepreneurs in the education and the fashion industry. We have researchers. We have students from Waterloo University in computer science. Now, I want to welcome another special guest. Her name is Cindy Lin. Join us in welcoming her, trailblazer in the medical world with an honors Bachelor of Science from the University of Toronto and a Doctor of Medicine from the University of Western Ontario. So she's now making waves as a first-year resident doctor at Toronto Sick Kids Hospital. Cindy's journey exemplifies the spirit of determination, academic excellence. So let's welcome Cindy to come to the virtual podium. Please take the stage, Cindy, and let's hear your story and your journey.
Cindy, unmute yourself.
Yep, I'm just unmuting. I'm gonna share screen. Hopefully you can.
Yeah, you can see now.
That's the wrong screen I'm trying to share, I think. Give me a second. Yes, this one. Here. All right, there we go. Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Cindy. I'm one of the first-year resident physicians at Sick Kids Hospital. As the hospital implies, I work in the specialty of pediatrics. Just something quick about myself. My interests within medicine are just general pediatric practice, working with the complex care population, so kids with genetic syndromes, G-tubes or home oxygen requirements, as well as medical education and social determinants of health. Outside of medicine, I really enjoy just staying active, kickboxing, hiking, baking, food, and travel. So you'll see me in my natural habitat in this photo where I'm the happiest. So despite this being a Zoom and something virtual, I really wanted to make this talk personable. The goal of this talk isn't necessary to tell you every detail of my journey through medicine, but to hopefully provide you with some new perspectives and practical tips when it comes to making career decisions. I won't be offended if you don't decide to be a doctor by the end of my talk. And so the goal is to really give you an overview of what being a physician and what medical training is like in Canada by using my story just as a sample timeline. There's many different ways you can build a career in medicine, and my story is just one example of it. I also hope to provide you with some practical tips and reflective questions to ask yourself to help you guide your decision when choosing a career, and hopefully to highlight some skills and attitudes that would make a person suitable for a career in healthcare. And so just a little bit in terms of my timeline and my journey. I think around the age of 11 or 12, I had this aha moment where I realized I wanted to be a doctor. And that really was just because I used to take my sisters to their pediatrician's office, and I thought their pediatrician was pretty cool. So I was like, I want to be like that. But I didn't know much about what that journey was like. And I had a lot to find out. And so knowing that I wanted to go to medical school, I ultimately ended up choosing to do my undergraduate studies at U of T in life sciences. And I know there's lots of rumors about it, about how you can't get good grades at U of T, or there's lots of bell curving and it's really hard. But I don't think that's really true. I think undergrad is meant to challenge you in different ways, regardless of which school you go to, which program you do. And it's really what you choose to make out of it and how you choose to face these challenges. And in fact, all of my friend group of the 6 of us were all at various parts of our medical school training and residency training right now. So you can go to med school if you do an undergrad in U of T. And then a couple of important timelines to highlight in terms of kind of how to set yourself up for an application to med school. All med school applicants will have to write something called the MCAT, and we typically do it the summer of our second year. It's a part of the admissions process, but I would say getting high scores is less and less so of a requirement in the current medical school admission. The other thing I wanted to point out is with any standardized testing, it does come with a cost. So the cost of writing an MCAT when I wrote it was about $500 plus additional prep resources. And then after the summer I spent writing my MCAT, I worked at a lab at SickKids, kind of doing some research. Research was something that I wanted to explore just to make sure that that's not something I'd want to pursue a career in. It was also really important because you gain a lot of critical analysis skills in doing research, and even as a physician, as a resident, you will be expected to do some research in some degree. So having exposure to that is important. And so I did that for a summer as well as in my 4th year. And then luckily, I was accepted to med school at Western right out of undergrad. So I started that in the fall of 2019. The application for med school actually starts the year before, and you start kind of writing up your personal statements or applications and letters of interest. You also start gathering reference letters from your professors and supervisors. And again, but there's a cost associated with the application that can range anywhere from $300 to $800, depending on how many schools you apply to in Canada or in the US as well. And then med school is med school. It's 4 years, where first 2 years we spent in classrooms, and the last 2 years we spend in the hospital, kind of gaining practical skills. And then now I'm currently, after 4 years of med school, I'm currently starting my journey as a resident physician at SickKids. As a pediatric resident, we are expected to do 4 years of residency. So what residency is, for those who haven't heard, it's essentially you're a doctor, but you still need to practice under a supervision of a of a fully certified doctor. So we are certified to prescribe and everything, but we still have a supervising doctor who oversees our practice, just so we can kind of gain the confidence and the experience to be an independent practicing doctor. In terms of the application for residency, again, that starts the fall of your final year of medical school. You need to gather reference letters from doctors you've worked with. You need to write personal statements, and then you have to do the interview. And the cost of application, again, ranges from $400 to over $1,000, depending on how many specialties and how many schools you apply to. And then the other point is, at the end of med school, you'd have to write a licensing exam to be certified as a doctor. And that licensing exam also comes with a cost of around $1,500. So there's a lot of, different ways people reach the journey of becoming a resident physician. So this is just one career path. But the one thing I wanted to highlight from this slide was that medical training is a long journey, and it requires financial sacrifices, both upfront costs, also the opportunity costs that a lot of my peers started working while I was only in med school. So those are some things to consider, and perhaps aren't as widely highlighted when people look at how a doctor is trained. And then in terms of what my day-to-day looks like right now, I won't bore you with all the details, but depending on which area of the hospital I'm working in, we usually switch every 4 weeks to a different area. The day usually starts anywhere around 7:30 to 8. We kind of take handover, which means the team that was on at night will give us updates, and we will then go and see the patients. We typically work what we call in an interdisciplinary setting. So in the hospital, you will see more than just doctors. You will see residents, med students. You will also see allied healthcare members. So pharmacists, social worker, dietitians, volunteers, physiotherapists, they're all very important parts of our healthcare team. And we will not be able to provide the care or execute any of our plans without these allied healthcare workers. The other thing I wanted to point out in terms of the life of a resident physician is, aside from our Monday to Friday kind of 7:30 to 5 or 6 hours, we are also expected to be on call in the hospital, meaning that there will be days in a given month where we have to spend 26 hours in a hospital. So 8 a.m. one day up until 10 a.m. the next day. And we're responsible for kind of taking care of patients overnight. And currently in Ontario, residents are expected to do that up to a maximum of 7 times a month. So it can be physically grueling, and most of us have a coffee addiction because of this. But that's kind of the journey of residency training that every doctor has gone through. And then, I wanted to kind of give you guys some practical tips. This was all just a very high overarching overview of what residency of medicine looks like, but I wanted to kind of give you guys some practical tips when it comes to choosing a career and how I was able to use that when choosing medicine as my career. So tip number 1 is that your career does not define you, you define your careers. I think that's so important, because oftentimes, maybe when I was younger, I had the idea that, having a successful career is what makes me a successful person. But actually, it's the opposite. It's when you develop an attitude of success in every aspect of your life, you can apply that to your career. And so to develop that attitude, I think having the ability to be self-reflective is truly important. One of my mentors that I worked in my research lab in gave me a few questions to ask myself when I was really deciding, if I wanted to go to med school and if medicine was what was for me. And he told me that the questions I should be asking myself are, first, what are my interests and passions? What gets me excited? So being able to answer that is important. And then, what are my skills, my strengths, and my weaknesses? What is important to me? And then, based on my answers to all of this, what career options aligns with all of this? My interests, my strengths, my weaknesses, what else is important? I think I went through that list, answered the questions, and I reached that being a doctor would be my number 1 career choice. But if not that, I'd be happy working in public health. And if not in public health, then I would do some sort of lab research that allows me to bring my research into practical day-to-day patient care. So those were kind of my career choices in order, but I knew that medicine aligned best with my interest. And in terms of special skills that we look for in the medical community, there's something that when we're applying to med school and residency that all the applications kind of want you to tailor to, and it's what we call the CAN-Med roles. And essentially is saying that as a doctor, not only do you need to be a medical expert, but you need to be a good communicator, you need to show that you're a collaborator, leader, advocate, scholar, and have attitudes of professionalism. And so there's various ways that you can do that, but it's typically through not just your day-to-day clinic work, but also the extracurricular activities you do and all of those other things that help you develop what we call these CAN-Med roles. And then the other point about reflection that I wanted to point out is that in order for you to do a good, thorough reflection, you need to gain experiences that facilitate that reflection. You're not going to be able to self-reflect if you just sit at home all day. So push yourself out of your comfort zone, work in different environments through volunteering, co-op opportunities, student organizations, get those skill sets outside of learning, outside of a classroom setting, so that you can do a good reflection on what your strengths, weaknesses, and all of that are. And the other thing I wanted to highlight was actually there's a research paper that a doctor from SickKids did that summarizes qualities of an excellent physician. And this was based on doctors who've been nominated by their colleagues as an excellent pediatrician and what their colleagues wrote about them. So there's some common themes that show up. One is intrinsic motivation, wanting to do what's best, having a passion to care for others, humility, reflective practice, so in other words, being self-reflective, having some sort of scholarship and being up to date to the new medical literature, having people skills, being adaptable, being engaging. And even though these were like kind of tailored towards healthcare workers, I think these are all good traits to have in any career you have. Some modifications here and there, but these are really traits and attitudes to have that make you succeed in whatever career you choose. So I thought that was something interesting that I wanted to share. The second tip I have is be passionate about what you do. Now, there's a debate out there. Some people are all for, passion should be what drives your career. But I have also spoken with friends who believe that your career is only a means for providing the financial abilities for you to pursue your actual passions. So there's not necessarily a right or wrong approach. Personally, I take the first opinion that you should be passionate about what you do. But I think that's because of the career I chose. It requires a lot of time and energy, and it wouldn't make sense if I wasn't passionate about it. Then the use of my time and energy doesn't equate. But let's say you worked, a 9 to 12 or 9 to 3 job, and you may not be the most passionate person about it, but it gives you the means to pursue other things you're passionate outside of work, then by all means. But I think to really succeed in medicine, you should be passionate about what you do. There's a myth that doctor makes a lot of money. And while that's not entirely false, it's also not entirely true. There's a lot of opportunity costs in the long training journey, about 12 years on average. And even though you make a comfortable amount as a staff doctor practicing independently, it takes time to reach that. And you're making a lot of financial sacrifices along the way, along with social and physical sacrifices that you can't count by money alone. There's this interesting graph here that I always like to show from many years ago. So this is before the UPS drivers got their raise like 2 weeks ago. But it shows here, out of high school, if you were to just be a UPS driver working full-time versus going to med school and digging yourself into debt, which is the red line, it would take about a doctor 17 years out of high school to make the break-even point of a UPS driver. Now, what's even interesting is I kind of talked about some of the crazy hours doctors work. So if a UPS driver were to work the hours that a doctor works, it takes a doctor nearly 26 or 27 years out of high school to make the same amount as a UPS driver. So don't let money be the only motivation to be a doctor. I think passion can be cultivated in some extent. If you're curious about medicine, go and explore it, and maybe that'll cultivate a passion. But do not go into medicine for just money or just because someone else told you to, or just to prove to other people you can do it. It needs to be an intrinsic motivation as opposed to anything extrinsic, because it's really not worth your time and your sacrifices if it's only extrinsic motivations pushing you to a career in medicine. Happy to answer any questions you have. You're also welcome to email me if you want to know anything more specific about medicine, kind of going to med school or residency. You can email me at cindy.lin@sickkids.ca.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Cindy. You know, I always believe, right? I always believe that it definitely takes a very special person to become a doctor, because you know what, you talk about all these areas, it takes disciplinary, takes responsibilities and sacrifices, and money cannot be the drive to become a doctor. I totally agree with you, right? And especially, like, I want to thank you for being a doctor at Sick Kids, especially for Sick Kids, because I'm a monthly contributor to the Sick Kids Hospital, and I always say that you are a young doctor. And I have one question for you. As a young doctor, as a young professional, how do you envision the future of a medical practice is evolving, and what areas do you think require special attention and innovation? Like, you're the new generation of the doctors. You see it all.
That's a really good question. I actually had a slide in my talk about that I kind of took out for the interest of time, but I'm happy to kind of share what I kind of wrote on it. So it's this slide here. It talks about the current and the future state of Canadian healthcare. I think the Canadian healthcare has been on the news a lot lately, or even during the pandemic, because we were so pushed to our limits. You're always hearing about backlogs, shortages of family doctors. We're in a crisis is essentially how it's advertised. And while that's not entirely false, it is pretty true. It's a tough time for the healthcare system for sure. But I think because of kind of the impact of COVID on the healthcare system, there's also lots of opportunities in terms of how the future looks. I can't give you I can't give you a definitive answer of how it looks. There's a big question mark on that future side. But I think some exciting things and where the needs are is, I think, exciting opportunities first. I think with the advancement of AI, there's actually such a huge role for AI in healthcare in terms of how we use our electronic medical records, how we can make certain processes in the healthcare system more efficient. AI is really going to help us in that. I think another cool part of medicine is something called personalized medicine. This is about tailoring treatments and drugs specific to your genetics. So being able to get kind of your personal genetics and tailoring care to that. I think that's something really cool, and we'll probably see in the next 10, 20 years, kind of the use of personalized medicine. I think where there's roles for where we need a lot of people, there's always going to be a need for people in healthcare, but we need people who are willing to be strong and loud advocates for the healthcare system, to advocate for the shortages and kind of the challenges, to advocate for the underserved population that we're seeing. And so I think there's a huge need, especially in primary care. So family doctors or like general pediatricians that you see in the community, there's a huge need for people to be doing all this work, because there's such a shortage that we need everyone to fill that in. And lastly, the other question mark is there's talks about kind of integrating healthcare in Canada. Right now, it's still legislated by your own province. So Ontario government decides kind of how Ontario healthcare goes. And we're kind of looking at combining it all together so that it's kind of more uniform throughout Canada. So that's something else to look forward to as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. All right, so please stay with us, Cindy. We're now going to the Q&A session. And so I'm just going to the inbox, the chat box here. Of course, we cannot probably pick every single one of them. So I'm going to the top, and there's a question for Ruby. I think this is probably a very common one, right? Ruby, are you there? So they're asking, will Ruby stay in the USA or in Canada for the career development? Which city would you choose and why?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So one thing is the academic job market is very variable. There is a lot of heterogeneity and a lot of unpredictability. And so generally the job market years, which was a pretty stressful time, usually happens in the medians, like during the 6th year, now it's like the 5th year, people would probably apply. It's like very common to apply to up to like 100 research institutions. And so while I'll probably be applying to a lot of research institutions in the US as well as Canada, and in the UK as well, it is somewhat up to the market. And especially like every department, every year, they might be looking for someone in macro or someone who is in doing labor economics, or they're doing econometrics. And so there's a lot of unpredictability in that sense. And I think one thing though is sort of laying out rules for yourself, because I think is really common to get caught up in the stress of the job market. And I think I've definitely seen grad students becoming like so stressed that they're not going to land, you know, at the research institution that they want, and then sort of pinning their whole, I guess, like sense of self behind that. And so, for example, for me, like I definitely would want to be in a big city. And so there's really only a few cities in the US, and Canada that I would be open to. And other than that, I think, you know, I would be open to like private sector or like public sector research opportunities. And I think it's not like sort of a, like I have to be in academia, like in like a specific setting, which I think it's very easy to get into that mindset because of the environment. So I think in general, it's just good to sort of like roll back and then say for yourself, okay, this is where I draw the line. This is what I'm okay with, because it's your life at the end of the day.
Yes, it is your life, and you have to be open-minded. And we all heard of this, right? Doctors Without Borders. Maybe the researchers without borders. Maybe you and Cindy can
Exactly.
talk about that. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Yes. So the next question actually for Kate. Kate, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay, so talk about in the chat, you can see something about the strategies, your online e-commerce strategies. How do you advertise the strategy for the e-commerce website online and products online? It's by, I think someone answered by Abby.
Yeah, great question. When I tackle things online, I think you have to be very, very watchful of a lot of the social media apps. I know it's kind of like tiresome, but what I do is I sort of found that Twitter is actually the original source for a lot of things, like early in the beginning of like a lot of celebrity, you know, drama, things that they're styled in, information that you're getting through companies. It's super text heavy, so that's why it's super quick and easy for people to release information on there. So I start there a lot. I probably spend up to like an hour every day on Twitter. And a lot of that feeds into the rest of my social medias, where we curate things like photography to showcase, or watching trends to follow. And trends will kind of move up and down. So it's really helpful to just be like super, super intimate with a lot of the accounts that might be doing similar things to you, whether you're building a brand or you're building a company from scratch. Just sort of seeing the trajectory of like how they work is really helpful. So those are some like things that I definitely implement day to day for online sort of strategy. But I think for offline, because it's kind of new territory for us, we're starting for the first time to do something in person. But we do a lot of research by, you know, either becoming friends with a lot of brand owners or knowing a lot of people that are within the state that we're opening up in. So in this case, it's New York City. By having a lot of conversations, we're able to figure out, okay, what are some of the things that brands here that do really well are sort of following. And we kind of, you know, want to follow the trajectory of a lot of just high fashion brands like Louis Vuitton or Chanel. So we kind of analyze the market through the same lens and want to sort of practice the same ways they market, whether it's through magazines or wheat pasting in New York City, or collaborations for videos and interviews online. All these things are super helpful. So these are kind of some tidbits that I've gathered throughout the years.
All right, thank you very much. And I'm going to the next question. I think this is one for Cindy. And, you know, someone, I think, Aing wrote in Chinese. I'm going to translate. So Aang is asking that he said, I also graduated with a degree in life science from UFT. And what are the job options for undergraduate students in biology, especially entry-level positions related to biology or medicine?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think it perhaps also points out some unfortunate downfalls of our current undergraduate system and how it's structured. I would say majority of life sci undergraduates would need to do some sort of master's degree because you don't have enough exposure in your undergraduate studies for the practical things. So if you want to work in a hospital, you don't have to be a doctor. You can be our allied healthcare member, so a physiotherapist, a dietitian, a pharmacist, but that requires a second degree of training for the more practical experience of it. You could also work in a research setting, but again, that's a master's and PhD. I would say the one avenue of science that's becoming more and more popular that you could do right out of undergrad perhaps has some more to do with pharmaceutical companies and the biotech industry. And that's more kind of integrating science and business together. So if that's something you're interested in, I do think that you can potentially get job opportunities with a bachelor, but sometimes with more and more people getting a master might still be required.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. And I think there was a previous question for Eddie. So I'm going to, probably send that to Eddie. And then at the end of it, I think everyone, probably all the audience, if you want to stay in this group, there will be a WeChat group. And then, we can post that question to Eddie. He's not here to answer. So I'm going to skip that. Let me just review if there's any other questions. Yeah, this is for Kate. I'm not sure it's relevant to your website. Wow, do you have any Aeropostale for sale?
I think this might be a jokes question from
oh, I see.
Jerry,
Okay,
or a friend of ours, but no, we do
oh,
not
your friend of yours.
well.
Okay, I guess. Of course you don't. It's about vintage, and that brand is not vintage, right? Okay, that's great. Okay, well, that's a good laugh. Thank you for asking. Okay, so we continue to open questions, and please, and thank you for the comments about, thank you for sharing. People are making lots of comments, actually. Thank you again, of course, for all the speakers, and there are many, sharing. Like they're saying that it's very inspirational, very insightful, lots of experience shared. And then can actually inspire them or give them a lot of, good ideas or fresh approach from a different angle. So watching the questions, and please follow the organizer, the main organizer committee, people in charge, please open your camera and mic to share your thoughts.
Okay, yeah. Maybe I can start with a few comments, and then I would like to invite our CPAC president, T1, to come and make some comment. First, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all our speakers for your great speech. I see here today is amazing speakers. Lots of achievements have been made in your field, and lots of leadership demonstrated in your careers, huntings, as well as your, I would say that entrepreneurship. Lots of skill have been demonstrated in the journey. I would say this is very amazing sharing for tonight. Great speakers tonight I see so far. The other thing is I will take this opportunity. This is a very amazing learning opportunity for young kids, even for us as many years engineers in our field. We learn from young people. That's why all the company need to learn from the young people. We need the young people for the future. So young people and new ideas, new initiative, and new dynamic, and new technology, tools, skill set, and your passion. This is all your future will be contribute to the success of the fields you select. So in this case, I would say, thank you all of you for your participants, as well as the tonight's all our audience patient to get through the whole process. I wish you all have a great night, and also can learn a lot from it. Okay, I will save the time for all our organizers. Let's go
Thank
to
you.
the T1. Yeah, CPAC president.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you just right.
Hi. Yeah, great. It just like Jen just mentioned, it's great to hear that our young people, young leaders, to share their opinions, the career path, and their point of view, how to pursue new opportunities and develop yourself. I think that yeah, very inspiring, and I'm very in it when I listen to all of you. I took the note, and I think that you guys did a great job. Yeah, we have been as parents, we are in a much different environment when we came to Canada, and we start our career in quite a different way. But your new environment and also your view are very exciting and much more advanced, I should say. And I think that it is the idea that for this this activity to share your experience for your friends who are also the young people, and from your point of view, it is much more closer to the situation they see every day. And I would say that a CPAC, which stands for Chinese Canadian Professional Association, we are strongly supporter. We are strong supporter for the young people. We have a young professional club called the Inlight, and we do our best to leverage our resource and everything to help our young people to get a job and to get their career set in this difficult environment. And all the best. I think that your speech will have a very positive impact on our people, and let's work together. There's no differences in generation in regarding to how do we develop ourselves in Canada. And all the best. Thank you.
Well said. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Okay, and next one, I think we can invite the Lu Youjie. Youjie Lu, can you open your camera and speak? Are you still here?
Hey, can everyone hear me?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you. Okay.
Okay, great. Yeah, definitely. Each speaker, they present their life paths and career passions, very inspiring. Maybe I'm just 10 years older than the speakers. So definitely looking back to my experience, lots of similar, I would say, paths and explorations. So for myself, I've been in the automotive industry for about 80 years. And this industry definitely right now is in a revolution. A lot of challenges from the tech companies, from Tesla's, right? So definitely lots of opportunities. That also means a lot of opportunities. So yeah, so like for software development, machine learning, right, data scientists, so all different opportunities. Yeah, well, speaker today, they have different background. I think covers all areas: life science, medicine, softwares, and also entrepreneurship. So very inspiring for me. Yeah, I would say we younger generation. I would say I'm also still young. Okay, so definitely feel free to explore, be passionate about what we are doing, and Eddie's word also give me a deep impression. Know the rule well, and then break the rule. Yeah, so that's my I would say my words. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Youjie. Next one, I would like to invite Tracy Dun. He is president of PMP. Tracy.
Yes. Hi.
Okay. Yeah.
Hi. Yeah. I'm just. I got blew me out. Those all excellent speaker. I just cannot. I took so many notes. Actually, I think the more education for not only for young people, more for everyone. Even myself, I took probably over 10 pages learning notes. So it's excellent because you're inspirational, insightful, and show your passion not only for yourself, career development. You show how you lead other people. So I see this generation, much stronger than at least my generation, myself. So I see the whole. So it's really inspirational. Each of them, from academic to entrepreneurial, and also how you go the path. Especially, I think very impressive, Cindy, and they lay out all the roadmap, and also give you a strategy. What's the learning point? I think that's a benefit to everyone. So I think for me tonight is a learning session. I so appreciate those young people. I think our hope future much brighter because I have you. You are the next leader and the generation. So I appreciate every one of you and appreciate your sharing. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Well said.
Okay, yeah. Next one, I would like to invite Nelson Liu. He's our VP of the CCA as well as the General Secretary. Okay, Nelson. Can you open the?
Yes. Hi. Thank you very much for the organizers for Chen. The CCEA and the CCAA. Daniel Chen, like you guys did a very good job tonight. This is a very successful event, and I know that we have a series of events. Like we had this similar events like 2 years ago, I think, and it was also very successful. Like we had those students or new graduates from universities. They presented very well, and they have a lot of experiences showed just like tonight. So every speaker tonight, they presented very well, and they basically summarized their experiences and their challenges they have met during their study and job hunting. So I think that that's give them a big applause for all the the good job they have done tonight. So I'm really happy, and we continue doing this, and this is going to be really helpful and informational, and down the road for all the young students and for the job seekers. Okay, thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we also have the CDN president of the association here, Canada Association here, Zhao Yongpeng. Yongpeng Zhao, can you open and make a couple of comments? I saw your nice comment in the chat room already. Okay, can you? Oh, okay. I think maybe not here now. Okay, next one. I would like to invite tonight's one of the speakers, Maria Sun Ludi's mommy. Maria is here. She is also the president of Victoria International College. She has spent a lot of time and energy on the education side. So it's really a proud mommy, and also it's our role model. Not only the kids is our role model, but also the parents. Well, lots of passion, lots of very successful story. Okay, Maria, you want to open your camera and make a few comments?
Yeah, sorry, I'm thinking I just the audience, and just
yeah, I did not tell you. I just suddenly invited.
Yeah, the great word for all the new the guest speakers. Yeah, I was touched by each of them. Yeah, it is great. I think it's our honor to have all the young people here. So sorry, actually, I think Mike, maybe you can open that.
Okay, yeah, Mike is Ruby's daddy.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, actually, I'm Ruby's stepfather, and I'm very proud of her. And it's not only for academic, actually, it's for the person she is.
Not only for Ruby, for all the young people.
that's for Ruby and all the young people. I'm very proud of you. The next generation will be much better than us. Was going to contribute to the society much more. And so we are very proud of you. And thank you very much for sharing all the information. To hopefully somebody can get inspired and to follow your suit. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the organizer. It is a great
Thank you.
session. I
Thank
should
you.
say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you.
Thank you, Meg.
Okay, I turn back to our MC. Now it's coming to 3 questions.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for all the committee organizers and for the special speech. So I'm looking, there is a actually question again for Cindy. And I know that these Cynthia asked all these questions, or maybe someone else asked if she's helping us to list all these questions, right? So they're all in Chinese. I'm not sure the person who asked this question would like to be answered in Chinese. I'm not even sure if Cindy, you wanted to answer in Chinese, or should I translate to English? I'm good either way. So maybe we'll do hopefully maybe there's maybe I'll open this as the first one. Do you speak Mandarin as well, Cindy?
I do speak Mandarin, but I think perhaps some things might get lost in translation.
Oh, that's fine. So we do
answer
English.
would be in English, but if you
Okay,
want
that's
the
fine.
basic answers, I can give it in Mandarin.
Sure, no problem. You can do both. So the first one is, can a doctor specialize in 2 different fields at the same time? For instance, being both an orthopedic doctor and dermatologist?
There's nothing stopping you from doing 2 or 3 specialties, but each needs their own residency. So you'd have to apply to get into the residency. And as a residence doctor, you don't make the full salary of a real doctor. So it's how long you want to spend being a trainee versus a real doctor. I also think some specialties are harder to match together. So for example, you can be an ICU doctor and an orthopedic surgeon because it's trauma related. You can combine your 2 knowledge. But if it's like 2 separate things, I think it's a little harder to incorporate, and you're going to end up picking one over the other and still be a trainee when you're a bit older.
Very good question, though. Very good question. So the second one is, and also it's very interesting. He's asking the person is asking which one is more difficult. Which medical specialty is the most challenging? Is it a neurosurgery or neurology?
I think they're both very challenging, especially it involves the brain, which we're still trying to understand better and better every day with research. Neurosurgeons do train longer. They have about a 7-year residency and have to do a PhD essentially. Neurologists train for 5 years. So duration-wise, neurology is shorter, but again, understanding the brain is something complex and something that's constantly evolving. So that kind of makes it a bit challenging.
Thank you. Wow, you're so good at answering these questions. I have a third one. Sorry to put you on the spot because this person has a total of 6 questions. So the third one is, I think you probably already answered this. Is it mandatory for all doctors to go through the residence doctor phase? I think
yes.
Yes.
Yes. The force between an internist and a surgeon, which one has a broader knowledge and faces a higher level of difficulty?
I would say they face different types of difficulties, and in terms of broadness of knowledge. So we'll start with the knowledge base. As an internist, they know everything about the body systems. So their knowledge base comes from knowing how different diseases present, how to treat and manage them without any surgery. As a surgeon, their knowledge base is much more practical. How can surgery fix things? So they might not necessarily know of the medical management, but you will see a surgeon when medical management fails and you need some sort of operation. In terms of, sorry, was the second part difficulty? I would say it's challenging in its own ways. As an internist, the diagnosis is not clear. You don't know what you're dealing with sometimes, and that's difficult. As a surgeon, you have a clear diagnosis most of the time, which is why you're operating, or you're operating to reach a diagnosis. So in that sense, it's easier, but their hours are a bit longer and harder in some ways because typically be in an OR, you still have to see your patients even after or before your operations. So it's more difficult in that sense.
All right. I think the fifth one, I'm pretty sure the answer is yes, is obtaining a medical license required to practice as a doctor in Canada, obviously. Now, the sixth one is actually, I find it very interesting too. It says, I'm hoping I'm translating right. What are the requirements for practicing as a doctor in Canada after graduating from, let's say, prestigious medical schools like Peking University, Beida, or Peking Union Medical College called Xiehe in China? Is recommendation from local Canadian doctors necessary? If so, how can one go about finding such a recommendation? Thank you very much. Yes, I think at the same time, like acupuncture or herbal medicine, right? In some sectors, I think they're practicing or they're being leveraged, right? So we can say that we just keep open-minded about that. I think that would be a fair answer from my head. Sorry, I'm not a doctor, but I do acupuncture, and I do find a good evidence that it actually improves our health overall. Anyway, so I don't know. I think we're about draw to a closing to this event. I don't think there's any other questions, but of course, you know, this is just the extension of our annual youth professional career development. I think we're going to have a second one, I think on September 19th, right?
16.
So yeah. 16, sorry. Yeah, so this is, I would like Mr. Zheng to talk about this.
Okay, yeah, so we will already have 3 section lineup. Number second is the September 16. We already have a few of our speakers already lined up. You can see here we invited the co-founder, the CTO, and the head of R&D, GPT Zero, which is the one the developer can detect anyone using ChatGPT. It's a very amazing company. Alex is one of the key guys. He's a co-founder, and he will come in to make a speech here on September 16. And then we also have Wei He. She is the media relation leader and a global communication at Deloitte. And then we also have the Elena Liu. She is a mortgage agent and credit analysis at the Rainfall Holding Group. Okay, and we also have the product designer at Sophie, and master of from University of Washington. And the last one we still had as a secret at this time. We are working on to get one, and the other 3 we already lined up for October, maybe mid-October sections. So we all have 3 sessions coming soon. Thank you so much for your attention.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I think I actually know 2 of them. I can promise it to be amazing for the next one. So as a moderator, and as we draw this enlightening forum to a close, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you for being a part of this exceptional gathering. So the energy and enthusiasm that have filled this virtual space are testament to the power of collaboration and shared aspirations. So we've had the privilege, right, of delving into the remarkable stories and insights of our distinguished guest speakers. And remember, the lessons and experience shared here are not mere words, but invaluable tools that you can carry forward in your career and endeavors. And as we bid farewell, let us take with us the spirit of unity and empowerment that this forum has ignited. So thank you again for your active participation and unwavering enthusiasm. Together, let's continue to embrace growth, explore innovation, and harness the entrepreneurial spirit with us. So wishing you all the best in your future endeavors. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yep.
Sure, we'll see you next time. But for whoever wants to continue and stay online, you're welcome. But I think we're going to call it a day, right, Mr. Zheng?
Yeah, I think we will go into have a free talk after. So everyone, please open your camera. I would like to take a group photo, if possible. Welcome to turn on your camera.